Thousands of Argentinians take to the streets during U.S. President Barack Obama's visit there, plus a new corruption scandal to report to you in Brazil. Thanks so much for joining us. For teleSur's English, I'm Coddy Weddle, and this is From the South. As I was saying there, thousands of Argentinians are in the streets protesting President Barack Obama's visit and commemorating 40 years of the beginning of the military dictatorship there. Protesters burnt U.S. flags to show their rejection of Obama's visit, which social movements consider hypocritical since it was the U.S. government which backed the military junta that took power in 1976. Now, the dictatorship, which ended in 1983, left 30,000 disappeared and was one of the most ruthless in the history of the region. And as part of the official ceremonies to mark the 40th anniversary, President Mauricio Macri and President Obama paid tribute to the victims at the Memory Park, where a monument with the names of the disappeared stands. The U.S. president swiftly left for Bariloche outside of Buenos Aires, a coincidence which many believe was a determined act to avoid the massive protests in Buenos Aires. And Argentina's most prominent human rights organizations, which led the efforts to trial those responsible for the crimes during the dictatorship, rejected the government's invitation to join official ceremonies with President Obama. Despite this, President Obama referred to civil society. However, he failed to apologize for the U.S. role in backing the dictatorship.
To those families, your relentlessness, your determination has made a difference. You've driven Argentina's remarkable efforts to hold responsible those who perpetrated these crimes. You are the ones who will ensure that the past is remembered.
The construction giant Odebrecht has been in the spotlight as at least 12 people have been detained over a looming corruption scandal. Now, prosecutors have confirmed that other people are being investigated in connection with the testimonies of the detained. Local media say that high-level politicians could be among those involved in this scandal in Brazil. And the opposition Social Democratic Party of Brazil is divided in its support for the government. Several key leaders of the party have publicly come out in support of President Dilma Rousseff. However, a clear sector among the party, led by lawmakers, are trying to gather support to break the governing alliance with the Workers' Party. The PMDB will take a final decision next month. Bolivia's President Evo Morales has called on neighboring Chile to start meaningful negotiations over returning part of the Pacific corridor to the landlocked nation. The Andean nation is seeking a settlement at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Our Bolivian correspondent now, Dimitri Oldano, reports.
The anniversary of Day of the Sea in Bolivia is one of the most important events celebrated across the country. For Bolivians, regaining their coastline, lost to Chile during the War of the Pacific, is a matter of national pride. During the ceremony celebrated this Wednesday, President Evo Morales said it's time to end the century-old dispute with its neighbour.
All we aim to achieve today is through dialogue and negotiation to find a consensual solution to return the sea to Bolivia with sovereignty.
In September last year, the International Court of Justice agreed to continue hearing Bolivia's case against Chile. Bolivia claims that regaining access to the Pacific corridor would boost trade and bring down the cost of exports, which compared to Chile are 55% more expensive.
We are one people, and people need each other. We have mutual needs for the progress and development of the region.
For us Bolivians, to have the sea means having progress, education, and economy.
The Day of the Sea recognises the symbolic importance of Bolivia's navy, the largest landlocked navy in the world with up to 6,000 members. Bolivians turned out in their tens of thousands to honour its naval forces, who have a base on Lake Titicaca, the world's highest navigable lake.
We must always fight through diplomacy, the way our authorities are doing to recover our sea. For Bolivia, this is very important. Bolivia was born with its sea. The return to sea is irrenunciable and unwavering.
Bolivia's government says this national show of pride to support the country's landlocked navy is more important than ever. President Evo Morales has called on Chile to start negotiations, but a final resolution between both countries could be several years away, as Chile maintains the territorial dispute was settled back in 1904. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSur, La Paz.
Dozens of Peruvians demanded an end to Keiko Fujimori's campaign. With banners and chants, the activists are urging the National Electoral Council to halt Fujimori's candidacy based on a number of testimonies and proof of vote buying and illegal financing of her campaign. The Electoral Council, which has already disqualified 2 other candidates, has not issued a resolution on Fujimori's campaign. And thousands of Venezuelans are taking part in the traditional Holy Week procession of Jesus of Nazareth. The procession pays tribute to an image of Jesus located in the San Pablo Cathedral here in Caracas, which is believed to grant miracles to the faithful. The Colombian government and the FARC rebels have postponed the ultimatum to reach a final peace deal at the Havana peace talks. Last night, representatives from both delegations gave a press conference to announce their positions regarding the extension of the peace talks. In Honduras now, the government and the political opposition are battling over a Supreme Court decision allowing presidential re-election without any consultation to the citizenship. Our correspondent Gerardo Torres now reports from Tegucigalpa.
The Honduran constitution explicitly prohibits presidential re-election. However, President Juan Hernandez is using his control on the Supreme Court and has been awarded a green light through a resolution issued last year that would allow him to be his party's candidate in the 2017 elections. Even though this could open an opportunity for ousted President Manuel Zelaya, he and the Libre Party have decided to confront the move. They believe that the only way to change the constitution is with a new constituent assembly, a proposition already presented in 2009 during Zelaya's government that sparked a violent military coup d'etat in June that year.
Even when the resolution could be considered by some as beneficial, for us, we will never be in favor of overlooking the Constitution to achieve personal benefit. Even though our democracy and system are in such a bad shape, we have to fight to fix it, to rescue it.
Manuel Zelaya has called for all his supporters to join him in the defense of the people's right to be consulted. He says he's not against presidential re-election, but he is against the imposition of a small elite that tries to hold onto power. He has warned the new Supreme Court that if they don't stop the resolution, they will become accomplices in a crime against the nation.
The last judges of the Constitutional Chamber of the Supreme Court committed a felony and a crime, and this has to be punished and considered as a crime against the nation. If this new court supports that action, this new court will also ignore the democratic principles of our country. By approving this resolution to be implemented, the court would undermine the foundation of the Honduran political system, which demands the respect of the people's sovereignty. It will be allowing that sovereignty to be replaced. If this new court absolves the last one from the crime of the coup d'etat and abusing their power to change articles in the Constitution, these newly appointed judges will become accomplices of crimes that are considered by our Constitution as high treason.
But for former President Zelaya, that won't happen if a popular referendum is not held. For now, the real struggle is between Honduras' political elite and a participatory democracy which allows people to have a voice in such crucial decisions. Gerardo Torres, teleSur, Tegucigalpa.
The United States has charged 7 Iranians for allegedly hacking nearly 50 financial companies and a New York dam. The attacks occurred from 2011 until 2013 and are believed to have been coordinated from Iranian companies. Although it is unclear the extent of the hacking scheme, the investigators claim that the government was involved in the scheme.
Today, we have unsealed an indictment against 7 alleged experienced hackers employed by computer security companies working on behalf of the Iranian government, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. A federal grand jury in Manhattan found that these 7 individuals conspired together and with others to conduct a series of cyber attacks against civilian targets in the United States financial services industry that in total, or in all, in sum, cost the victims tens of millions of dollars.
The International Criminal Tribunal found former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic guilty of genocide. Karadzic will serve 40 years for the 1995 Srebrenica massacre and of 9 other war crimes charges. The 70-year-old is the most senior political figure to face judgment over the violent collapse of Yugoslavia. However, some of the survivors say they are disappointed with the sentence.
For me, as a victim of genocide, I'm afraid this is some political game, but I still believe in this court's prosecutors. Probably they will prepare some more evidence for the appeal process, so we hope to be satisfied at the very end.
The Syrian peace talks have reached their final day in Geneva, and the High Negotiations Committee spoke about the results. HNC senior negotiator George Sabra announced that the delegation had presented their vision for the basic principles of the political process for Syria. They also presented a draft of the executive framework for the transitional body. The next round of talks is scheduled for the second week of April. The Syrian army says it has entered the Islamic State-held town of Palmyra. Footage of tanks and soldiers entering the town were broadcasted by Syrian state television. The ancient town has been held by the terrorist group since May of last year. Belgian authorities are looking for a second attacker and suspected of taking part in the bombing this week of a Brussels subway train. The suspect is said to have fled from the bombed metro station. Meanwhile, reports indicate that there are signs that the same Islamic State network behind the Paris attacks were the ones involved in the Brussels attacks. Footage of an Israeli soldier executing a Palestinian man in the head has surfaced. The Palestinian male was shot in the head as he laid injured on the ground, unable to move. According to the Israeli army, the soldier was detained for the incident. Large crowds of university and high school students, along with members of labor unions, took to the streets of the capital of Paris in France to protest against labor reforms. The rally, however, eventually did become violent there. Fierce scuffles broke out after protesters threw bottles at the police. Law enforcement then retaliated by firing tear gas to disperse the crowds. A few people there were slightly injured during the event. Australian and Malaysian authorities have confirmed that 2 pieces of debris found in Mozambique earlier this month are almost certainly from the MH370 flight. The aircraft disappeared 2 years ago, and investigators say the mystery can only be solved by finding the crash site and recovering the black box. Legendary Dutch soccer striker and coach Johan Cruyff has died of lung cancer. Cruyff, who was 68 years old, had been a heavy smoker and even had a heart surgery in 1991. He emerged as one of the world's greats in the early 1970s and was named European Footballer of the Year in 1971, 1973, and 1974.
Be careful.
British soccer player Adam Johnson has been sentenced to 6 years for sexual activity with a 15-year-old girl. The judge told Johnson he had abused a position of trust and caused his victim severe psychological harm. The player has already lodged an appeal against the conviction. And that's what we're covering. Thanks so much for joining us on this Thursday. Plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. We'll see you here tomorrow. In the meantime, we'll see you on social media.